The Toronto Maple Leafs might have a new interesting trade target that's just been revealed today heading into the trade deadline. Will Ilya Samsonov work his way back into being the starting goaltender in the playoffs if the Leafs make the playoffs? It's been a tight race heading into the All-Star break. All of that and more, including line combinations and all that fun stuff in this episode of Leafs Digest. Welcome back to Leafs Digest. My name is Darius Domingues, and guys, before we go any further, we've noticed that about 80% of you watching our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you could do myself and Nick a favor and hit that subscribe button, and do yourself a favor so you can stay up to date with everything Toronto Maple Leafs. And guys, without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, the Leafs may have a new trade target. We've talked a lot about defensemen and maybe some forwards they can bring in, some forwards they can, going out on the opposite end of that, coming out of the Leafs organization. But this one I found very interesting today while I was just scouring Twitter for any new Leafs news and all that fun stuff. It is Colton Parayko from the St. Louis Blues, and I mean, he's been linked to the Leafs for quite a while. I mean, a few years. I heard his name pop up, during the COVID year, right after the St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup. But anyway, let's get into the tweet. According to the website, The Fourth Period, the St. Louis Blues will explore their options regarding a potential Parayko trade. In fact, Parayko's contract is one of the worst in the league. If the Blues somehow will trade Parayko, it will be a huge win for St. Louis, in their opinion. Now, keep in mind, that is in their opinion, of course. So, if you're going to ask me my opinion, I mean, he's been linked to the Leafs for quite a while. He's a right-hand shot defenseman. He's won a Stanley Cup, and I mean, you can't teach that. One thing I've noticed about the Leafs over the last few years, and a lot of people I don't think are talking about it, they tried to correct it somewhere down the line, is they don't have a lot of guys who've won a Stanley Cup. They brought in Jake Muzzin, a guy who has, but they haven't really surrounded the young core, and they're not so young now, they're in their prime, really, with guys who've won the Stanley Cup. So this is a guy... You need help on defense. He's a right-hand shot. He's exactly what you need. He's a defensive defenseman. I mean, offense, as you can tell from this screenshot, does not follow this guy around. I mean, maybe just shooting, but everything else, the offense does not follow him around. But in terms of, a defensive defenseman, wouldn't be a bad pickup. You just have to figure out the contract situation, which I think you can do in today's NHL. If you have to include some, draft compensation, something like that. Obviously, you don't want to include any top prospects or a first-round pick. If you have to do that, and I think Tree Living has, it's been talked about the last few weeks, he doesn't want to do that, and I don't think he should. If you're the Leafs, you've given up a lot the last couple of years without really getting a lot. So, not in terms of, quality of player, in terms of going deep in the playoffs, right? So you want to look for that. But anyway, to get more into Parayko, who I think is a pretty interesting target. I'm not saying I love it 100%, but I just think it's an interesting match. He's exactly what they need. It's just, the salary and all that stuff. There's a lot of hurdles. But anyway, to get into his stats, like I said, offense does not follow this guy around. 15 points so far this season in 44 games. Now, the St. Louis Blues are also not the greatest team this year, so keep that in mind. But again, if you look at his numbers, which one thing to note as well is he stays relatively healthy, which is something we've been talking about with Tanev coming over from the Flames. With all of that talk, he's not really, he doesn't really stay healthy. This is a guy who does stay relatively healthy. But he's not going to put up points and not flashy like that. You got to really look at his defensive numbers for stuff like that if you want to see his worth. I don't think he's someone... I think he's going to bring like that Stanley Cup pedigree and more of a defensive game than anything offensive. And honestly, like after the whole Klingberg thing, I don't know if the Leafs want to go more offensive. They have some offensive weapons like Morgan Rielly. And they need to add more guys like Simone Benoit. I am on the Simone Benoit train this season. He has been fantastic, and I know a lot of Leaf fans are thinking similarly to me. He has been fantastic. But anyway, this, some praise for, because we got the other side in their opinion. He's one of the worst contracts. Some praise for them as well, right? He's the longest tenured St. Louis athlete. He debuted in 2015. Pretty interesting. Third most games played by a Blues defenseman, 520. That's pretty impressive for that franchise. He's in his 9th year as a St. Louis Blues. Again, 247 points. Not bad. I don't really like to look at plus minus, and he's a Stanley Cup champion. He's also, in the opinion of Blues fans, he's having a really good year this year, in their opinion, right? I don't watch too many Blues games. I'm a Leafs fan, so that is their opinion, but he is, a bright spot on the team. Blues fans are seeing. So that is really nice for them. And honestly, like I said, it's just an interesting fit. I don't know if I love it or hate it. Like I said, you have to make the salary work as well. So that could get a little hairy. But listen, I think it's an interesting kind of scenario there. I've heard his name linked to the Leafs before in seasons past, and he's kind of resurrected his career a little bit because the last few years, people have been saying, like the tweet I showed earlier, one of the worst contracts in the league, which is terrible. But anyway, another one here from Tom is Colton Parayko is on an absolute tear this season. Impressive in every aspect of the game. Now, again, I don't know if he's so impressive on offense, but I think it's just more of what the Leafs need. So again, I keep using the word, but it's very interesting. It's something to just keep an eye on. I don't know if it would work in the Leafs' favor, but he's a player that they need more of. You know what I'm saying? So something definitely to keep an eye on. But I wanted to get into another topic as well. Ilya Samsonov has come back from the Toronto Marlies. He's played one game last week. I thought he looked good. The Leafs didn't really look good, and they lost to the Detroit Red Wings. And then he got into another game this weekend against the Seattle Kraken last night, Sunday night. So, I think he's playing well. I think he took the time, and the organization took the time to allow him to breathe a little bit, get away from the media, get away from the team, and just allow him to take a deep breath, cool down, and, get back to the basics, which I think was a huge thing for him. I don't think you ever lose the skill. I think it was more of a mental thing. His lateral movement was way too exaggerated. He was like left and right, like flying out of the crease. He looked like Cujo, but without stopping the puck. But yeah, I think he's looked great since he's come back. He seems a little bit more calm. Last night he made some big saves. You got to give it to him. He made some huge saves. He kept them in the game, which is exactly what you need a goaltender to do. And he looked kind of like Ilya Samsonov from last year. And I love this as well. I saw this morning, and this is just awesome. Like, True Living, as he's walking past, I know it's a screenshot, but if you want to go check out the video on Twitter, go check that out. As he's walking past Ilya Samsonov while Samsonov's doing his post-game interview, he gives him a little pat on the back, like just to say, good job, right? And I think that's just so cool. I think it's a vote of confidence from your GM, and I think that feels really good if you're a goaltender, especially a struggling goaltender like Ilya Samsonov has been so far this year, right? So for him to get that kind of vote of confidence, like, hey, we're going to take our time with you, we're going to get your head straight, we're going to get everything back in order, and we're going to bring you up, and we're going to put all of our confidence back into you, right? And I think it's kind of reflected that on the ice. I know it's one game, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but one game is better than no games. It was looking very bleak for Samsonov for a long time, for a couple months, and I think that was his first, I think they said, road win since early December or something. He was in tough this year, so to see him get that little bit of success back yesterday, it feels good. And I think you can kind of rely on him more, because you cannot rely on Martin Jones to put in that workload that he was the last month. I mean, Wool's been out for a long time, and I'm excited to see what Wool has when he comes back. It's going to be very interesting musical chairs for goaltending if Samsonov is indeed back. But anyway, last night too, he gets the belt, the Leafs belt. So, and he says, long time I didn't feel this. And Ilya Samsonov, his first win in 43 days, so well over a month. Just fantastic. Got a new mindset. Like, if you want to read the article as well, got a new mindset going there. I love what they did with this, I have to say. I kept saying throughout the whole series of videos we were doing and mentioning Samsonov, I don't think you lose the skill. I think it was a mental thing. He needed a second to take a break, and he came back, and he's made some big saves, and he won them that game last night. Like, obviously the scoring did too. Austin Matthews, a freak. I mean, we can have a whole video on him. He is fantastic, but Ilya Samsonov just fantastic. But speaking of Austin Matthews as well, Austin Matthews passed the belt to Ilya Samsonov last night, because Matthews obviously had that hat trick in Calgary. Looked great. But this is what he had to say on Ilya Samsonov. I don't think it was like a charity gift. It was well deserved, and I agree with him. Obviously, it's been a tough for him the last couple weeks, and I think tonight was a really good step in the right direction. I think Austin Matthews is absolutely correct. I mean, it was absolutely a step in the right direction, and love to see it for Samsonov, right? And going forward, I think Samsonov, I don't know. Let me know in the comment. I don't want to get ahead of myself, all right? Let me know in the comment box what you think is going to happen going forward, because it's one game. But if he has his head straight and he can play like last year's Samsonov, could be the starting goaltender out of nowhere. seemingly out of nowhere for the Leafs in the playoffs this year, if they are to make the playoffs, which I think they will squeeze in at least. They're too good not to. Every team goes through a slump, right? So hopefully they get back on track here heading into the month of February, and hopefully Samsonov can take control of that starting position again. I love what Jones has done, but at the end of the day, he's a little bit older, and he isn't paid or brought in to be your starting goaltender. It should be Samsonov and Wool splitting the duties. So yeah, let's just hope Samsonov can stay on this track and put up some wins. But before we get out of here, something interesting I thought, the whole Reaves situation that came out today too, Ryan Reaves, some interesting stuff on like 32 Thoughts as well with Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick. Heading into Wednesday, it's possible that the Leafs could do something with Reaves that could be sending him down, which I don't think he would take well, or moving him out. And it's also... they're just not playing him, and I'm not sure. I'll get back to the screenshot in a second. They're just not playing him, and I'm not sure if he has a spot on this team. I like McMahon. I kind of like what the fourth line has done. Some games, the whole team hasn't looked that great the last stretch of games, but I kind of like what the fourth line, the current construction of it looks like and what they've been doing. So I'm not sure Reaves... I know what he brings, but I'm not sure he has a spot on Sheldon Keefe's Maple Leafs. Let's just put it at that, all right? But to get back to this, Toronto's also obviously looking for D-men, and they will be asked about Nyes, Minton, and Cowan, and obviously a 2024 first-round pick, which is pretty obvious, but it's not likely that Trey Living will move any of those, and I like that. I think the Leafs have given up a lot of not only prospects, but draft picks the last couple of years to stay competitive going into the playoffs, and they haven't really gotten results like that, like I mentioned earlier in the video. So I would be very careful with that, and I think Trey Living wants to, so we're on the same wavelength. I like that. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of Leafs Digest. My name is Darius Domingues. Let me know in the comment box what you think of Colton Parayko possibly coming to the Leafs. Just threw it out there. And Ilya Samsonov going forward. Hopefully he can string together some great performances and, get the Leafs higher in the standings going into the playoffs. But we'll see you guys tomorrow for another video.